Hello, my name is Landon Harrell, and today we're going to be covering data and content within Salesforce Marketing Cloud. This is intended to be a bit of a follow-along video, so I encourage you open up Marketing Cloud alongside me here, and we will be covering both the data aspects of the tool as well as training you how to build email content. You'll see here I'm in the internal communications business unit within Salesforce Marketing Cloud, and we're going to spend all of our time today within Email Studio. So we'll go ahead and navigate over there. On this overview page that you'll see here, you'll see any of the last emails that you've recently edited, any sends that have gone out previously, or any future sends that are currently scheduled. What we're going to be spending our time in today is both the Content tab and the Subscribers tab. I'm going to start with subscribers, and this is where we can find all of the data and all of the lists that we're going to be sending our emails to. To do this, we're going to access what are called data extensions. Data extensions are just a fancy name for a table of data within Marketing Cloud. So we'll hover over subscribers and navigate to data extensions. Within our data extensions here, you will see that in our parent folder, we have different types of data extensions or different pieces of data themselves. So we have things like employee main, evening class main, parking main, and student main. These are basically the different types of data that are available for you to segment on to create lists for sending your emails. These data extensions here, you'll see there's different data associated with those data extensions. We can see how many records exist within each one of those depending on the size of them. They are all sendable, meaning that we can select them to send an email. For data extensions themselves, whenever we click on the name of the data extension, we'll open up the data extension. This is where we can see, again, the number of records, the date this was last imported, the fields on that data extension and the data types associated with it. And if you have the appropriate access, you can even view the records within the data extension. Now, these data extensions, these main data extensions, exist for the purpose of filtering. So you will never be sending to these directly. You will always be filtering off of these data extensions to create the list that you would like to see. This is what's called creating a filtered data extension. There's a few ways to do this. You can click the filter icon here, and that will start creating a filtered data extension. Or if we go back to our data extensions folder, we can hit create up here and choose filtered data extension. And then you'll see that there are lots of folders over here on the side. So there are many different filtered data extensions that have already been created and live within these folders. For example, in the student affairs folder, we have a junior students folder, and that has a junior students filtered data extension in it. You can see the source of that filtered data extension here is student main. So we have filtered our student main data extension to create our junior students. If I click into that junior students data extension, you'll see that we find 2,692 records. And you'll see that our filter criteria, it's very simple. It's where the academic standing, academic level is equal to junior. Now, these filtered data extensions, again, at the end of the day, these are what you're primarily going to be sending your email to. To create a filtered data extension, we're just going to go back up to our parent data extensions folder. We'll then find our student main data extension and choose the filter icon. This is where we can then start by pulling over fields from our specific or from our source data extension to create our filter criteria. Now, when we add this in here, we can come in, we can change the different operators. So begins with, contains, is equal to, empty or not empty, things like that, so that you can find specifically the populations that you're looking for. Now, if you don't know the values that may exist within this field right here, SMU does have a data dictionary that is available. That data dictionary will provide you with all of the different field options for that specific field. Within this filter, though, we can also group different things together. We can choose ands and ors. And so this is where you can go through and really be very selective and very granular with who you want to pull into your final data extension. Now, once we've created a filter here, what we want to ask ourselves is is this just a one-time list that we're sending to, or is this something that's refreshed on an automatic basis? If it's a one-time list, easy enough. We can hit save and build up here. We can then give ourselves a name for our resulting data extension, choose the folder that we're saving it into, and then click save. For a one-time use, your filter criteria is only going to be evaluated when you hit save and build, and then that list is static unless you go and manually refresh that. If you have a list that needs to be automatically refreshed, we can click Save as Filter right here. And this is saving your filter definition. And then you would simply add that to an automation within Automation Studio to create your automated filter data extension. That's something that you'll likely want to reach out to one of your Marketing Cloud administrators to help you set up and configure. Within all of our data extensions over here, we have no limit on the number of data extensions that we can create, but we do want to stay as organized as possible with this. Your Marketing Cloud administrators are going to have the details of where those data extensions should be stored, if they should be deleted after use, how you will actually interact with utilizing these data extensions. It's typically fairly important to go ahead and build your data extension prior to building out your email, if that email is going to have personalization or dynamic content within the body of the email itself. So from here, what we're going to do is head over to Content Builder to actually start building out our email. For the purpose of what we're doing today, we're going to be using our junior students data extension as who we're going to be sending the email to. We can head over to the Content tab now. And here within Content, you see something very similar to our data extensions. This is where you'll see a myriad of folders here for where all of that content is saved. When we talk about content within Marketing Cloud, we're not just talking about emails. We're talking about we're talking about templates, images, different content blocks that are saved. All of those can be saved pieces of content within Marketing Cloud. I will say, just because you have added text or added an image to an email does not mean that you have to save that content within Marketing Cloud. Oftentimes that content may just exist within the body of the email itself. But if you're going to be reutilizing that content over and over again, it's helpful to go ahead and save that as a saved content block or a saved image within Marketing Cloud itself. We'll cover how to do that in just a moment. Here within Content Builder, you'll see that we have a local and a shared tab. Local is specific to this business unit. So the information in the local tab is only stored in internal comms, whereas our shared tab, which you may or may not have access to, is going to be any of the content that is shared from other child business units. So you may need that from time to time. Most of the time, you're going to just be working out of the local side of Content Builder. Of course, within Content Builder, we can search. Anything that we search, we can search within either the current folder that we're in or within all of our content. That search is going to more or less be real time and display results as you type over here for you to select from. For our Content Builder folder, this is where you'll see we have the different folders corresponding to the different communication areas within SMU, internal communications. So you'll want to make sure that you store your content in the proper place. If you need help determining where to store that content, you may want to reach out to one of your Marketing Cloud administrators. Within our content here, we can also choose how we want to sort the content that is shown up here. So this is where we can click on the different headers to sort by the different types or locations or modified dates of your content. Typically, we want to do modified descending. That's going to show you the most recently edited content within the account. For all of our content over here, we can check the box next to it. And this is where our actions menu can come up. So we can either share this content with other business units, send it to the recycle bin if we no longer need it, or move it to a different folder. We can also tag all of our content as well. So all of our content, it may live in different folders, but we may want to tag that so that we can easily find that content, even if it lives in different places. Additionally, we can see how we're sorting up here. So if you don't want to click on the different headers, you can also change that manually up here. We're viewing things in a list format right now, but we can also view things in more of a card format. This can be really helpful for images to make sure you're choosing the right image when you need it. I typically default over to list view. Our settings icon here is basically just going to be adding in additional pieces of data. This is only specific to your user, so you're not changing this for how everybody views it. And then finally, the filter icon over here is one of the most helpful. So this can be really beneficial whenever you're coming in and you're just wanting to find a specific email. You can filter and just find emails in here, or you can also click the down arrow and find specific types of emails. So if we just want to find template-based emails, you can find all of those just by filtering. You can also find specific things by owner. So if we want to look at specific emails that are owned by specific users, you can find that as well down there with your owners. All right, we're going to go ahead and remove our filter criteria. And what we're going to do is start by creating an email. So prior to creating emails, you will likely have templates that have already been set up in your account. I know the internal comms business unit here has quite a few templates that have already been created. You'll want to talk with your Marketing Cloud administrators around which of those templates is best for the email that you're going to be building. To build an email, though, we're simply going to hit the Create button up here at the top and choose Email Message. You'll see that you can also create things like email templates, content blocks, and just uploading content directly into Content Builder. Email messages and email templates differ. Email templates are basically the framework of an email and provide a lot of the styling. They provide a lot of the demo or initial content that may show up within the email itself. But an email template cannot be sent out to a data extension. Only an email can be sent to a data extension. When we create an email message here, you'll have the option of how you want to create that message. We are always going to choose either template or HTML. You can also use an existing email. If there is an email that's already created and you want to be able to utilize that, you can choose an existing email there, but we'll go ahead and choose template today. For our templates, you should default over to the Saved tab. If you don't, it may have you on Empty or Basic. You'll want to choose a Save tab. This is where all of SMU's specific templates live. For for today's build, we're going to use the Simple Brand template here. We'll select that and then hit Select. Next up, we're defining our email properties. So I'm just going to call this Demo Training. You can give this email a description. So if this is something you're using on a regular basis or that other people are going to be sending on your behalf, you can go ahead and provide a description of that template or of that email, excuse me. Next, we'll choose the location that we're going to save this email in. So again, this is important to make sure that we are keeping things organized within the account. You don't have to add campaigns. I don't believe that your team utilizes campaigns. You can share emails directly from the email properties here. However, that's something that you would likely do later, and we can leave everything else standard. Next, we're going to go to our Add Content screen, and this is where we'll actually see the template. So the template has more or less been copied into an email, and everything you see here is static content. So this is not something that if you change this, it's going to change it on the template. It's only changing it for this particular email. Now, in this email, you can always tell that an email is an email because it has a subject line and pre-header up here. If you don't see this subject line and pre-header section, that means you are just editing a template. From here, we can see our blocks, which is all of the different blocks that we can drag and drop into the email itself. You'll see the Content tab, which allows us to pull in any of our saved content directly into the email. We have our layouts, which is basically providing structure to the email itself, or layouts can also be a collection of content blocks. The Design tab is going to allow you to change different style settings within the template. So if we wanted to change the background color, the padding, if we want to change our font styles, you can do all of that directly here within the Design tab. And then the Tree View lets us move things around easily within the template itself. This can be really helpful for really long emails. If you just need to move blocks between different slots or between different layouts, you can do all of that within the Tree View. For today, what we're going to do is talk about how we can go ahead and edit these emails. So you'll see whenever I hover over these blocks that there is this kind of darker gray rectangle that goes around these 3 blocks. That means this is a content area. A content area can have specific properties applied to it that only apply to that specific content area and the content blocks within. If I click the drop down arrow here on this content area and choose properties, this is where I can come in and I can add some styling onto this content area. So if I want to add in margin or padding or a border onto that content area, or if I only want it to show or hide on a mobile device, I can do that directly within these content area properties. Now within this content area, you'll see that we have separate blocks. So we have an image block, and a text block. To edit any of these blocks, you simply click on them. And then based on the block type, you will see the properties come up here and expand on the left-hand side. Now we can simply come in and we can edit this content. Hi, I'm a headline. And then we can just type in here just like we normally would with any other word processor. You're going to be typing here on the left-hand side, not directly in the content area itself, but you'll see those updates in real time over in this text area. Of course, we have all of our styling over here. If we need to make something a header 1, we can choose that. And it's going to automatically apply our default styles for those specific header types. Now, say that we wanted to add in someone's name, that we want to display their name in the email. We can do that by clicking the little person icon right here. This is where you'll see your profile attributes and your system attributes. You never want to use your profile or system attributes. We always want to select to choose a new data source. We'll do that, and then we're going to select the data extension that we were looking at earlier that we're planning on sending to. So that's going to be our student affairs and then our junior students. And you'll see here is that data extension. We'll go ahead and select that here and hit OK. Now that we've done that, if we click our little person icon again, you will see all of the fields from that data extension are available for us to choose. So we could say in here, instead of hi, I'm a headline, we could put somebody's first name in instead. So hi, whatever their first name is, comma. Additionally, we can come in and add as many of those different fields as we want so that we can be able to see that data within our email. Now, for all of our image blocks, these are things where we can go in, we can add images, we can change the width and the height of those images, make that scale to fit within the area. Most of the time, what we want to do is change our width here to be whatever we want the maximum width to be, and then we can select scale to fit. You're going to have to play around with these settings to understand what exactly works for you. You will notice that every content block, though, however, has a content tab, a block settings tab, and an HTML editor tab. The content tab is going to be specific to the content that you're adding to that block. So in this case, that would be an image. In the case of our text block, that was all of the text. You'll see that we have some settings around this image. We can add a link to that image, all of the settings for that particular piece of content. The block settings, though, are more about the block itself and not the content within the block. This is where we can do things like adding margin and padding. Margin is the space on the outside of the content. Padding is the space next to the content. And then finally, we have our HTML editor. So if you want to make specific changes in the HTML, you can do that directly within Content Builder. All right, so that brings us to what our basic content blocks are. So we have things like a button, which you see down here below, a code snippet, which could be used for things like AMP script, which is Marketing Cloud's scripting language, a freeform block, which allows you to have text and an image within one block. We have an HTML block that you may be utilizing to embed content from other services, an image block, which is what you see here, where we could pull in an image. And we have a text block, which is what you see down here, where we can type out text that would show up within the email. I'm not going to get into interactive or our social media or custom blocks today. I do want to cover a little bit of our advanced content. We have things like dynamic content. Dynamic content can basically show different pieces of content based upon some data that you may have. about somebody. So if you wanted to show people in the engineering school one piece of content and people in the science school a different piece of content, you would use dynamic content to do that based upon the data that you know about them. You can do A/B testing within an email itself. So this is where you can have two pieces of content. It's going to split your audience 50-50 so that you can see which one drives the highest engagement. We're not going to be covering Einstein content selection or content testing. Those are licensed separately within Marketing Cloud. External content would be if you are pulling in an RSS feed or other external images or videos. And reference content is basically pulling in a content block that already exists within Marketing Cloud. Now for saved content, we can click here. We can navigate through our folders to find that saved content. Once we find it, we can just simply click and drag, and we can drop wherever it turns blue within the content area. And you'll see that gets populated here, has the appropriate styling already applied to it. Everything is already configured for that specific piece of content. If we need to delete or duplicate a piece of content, we can always just choose the drop down next to it and then choose the action that we would like to take. Next up is our layouts. Our layouts provide structure to the email. So if we wanted to add in some columns into our email, we could simply pull that wherever it turns blue, let go, and now we have a column section within our email. Now you'll see when I am editing a layout that everything else is darkened around that layout. So that's how you know what you're editing over here on the left-hand side. Now with this layout, you can of course pull in any of your content blocks that you would like to start editing content. We can also pull in saved content. So again, if you have anything that's already saved and you just want to reutilize it, you can pull in that saved content. Layout settings over here is going to give you options for how your layout is going to stack. Your columns are going to stack on mobile, left to right, right to left, or none. Layout styling, so if you want to add in any margin or padding or borders onto your layout, you can do all of that. And then on our configure tab, this is where we can choose kind of our different percentages for our columns. We can talk about the space in between those columns. Just space things appropriately within the body of the email. Now, all of our content layouts and our content blocks can all be saved for reuse. So if you get a layout looking exactly how you want it, and you know this is something that you're going to be reutilizing in the future, then you can come over, choose Save Block down here, and hit Create New. This is going to add it to your content library, and then you can come back under the Content tab, and you can pull that saved block in multiple times. It's already going to be formatted, already going to have your content available for you, and you can make any changes there in the future. We're going to go ahead and add a subject line and just say, this is a subject line. With your subject lines, you can also add in dynamic subject lines as well. So just like you would do dynamic content, you can do dynamic subject lines. We can add in a pre-header if we would like as well. This pre-header is basically preview text that shows up whenever somebody has the email in their inbox. From here, now that we've got our email looking good, we can also go over and preview and test our email. What preview and test allows us to do is to make sure that our email, especially if we have any personalization or dynamic content in the email, is going to render appropriately. So what we can do is we can click the folder icon here, and we want to preview this email as a recipient who's going to actually have that email in their inbox. So we're going to navigate to our data extension that we are that we're going to be sending our email to. So we'll choose Student Affairs, Junior Students, and here's our data extension. And then we can choose a specific student that we would like to preview the email as. So we'll go ahead and hit Select there, and you'll see it populates their name in the email. We can then, of course, click through and view that it's going to continue changing the name for each of the students that exist within our data extension so that you can verify that everything is working appropriately. Once we've done that, if we want to send a test email to ourselves and actually see it in our own inbox, we can enter our email address or multiple email addresses in here, choose our send classification. It's always best to choose default transactional here. And then we can choose our sender profile so that we can define the information of where our email is coming from. Next, we want to just leave everything else default and click Send Test. And that is going to send the test email out to the email address or addresses that have been designated here. That's all there is to it for creating emails within Marketing Cloud. One thing I'd like to mention, one final note on spacing. When we're talking about spacing within Marketing Cloud, we always want to think about it from the outside in. So we want to talk about spacing from the furthest out that we can go all the way down to the individual piece of content if we want. So that starts with the Design tab here, where we can play with the spacing on our template. We can play with the spacing on our body content, and that's going to be everything on kind of like the outside of this white section here. From there, we can move into our content area properties, and that's where we can play around with the spacing there, the margin and the padding. From the content area, we can come down into layouts. If we actually do have layouts that we're utilizing under our layout settings, play with our margin and spacing there. And then within our layouts, we can then finally work on our content itself. So we have our content blocks and even the content itself. If we're talking about the text, we can play around with our text spacing. So working our way in from the template all the way down to the individual piece of content, that's going to always provide the greatest amount of flexibility for you within the email itself. Now, once we have our email looking good and we are ready to send our email, there's a couple ways to do that. So first off, if we open our email here on the properties page, there's a send option. That's where we could go through, define our properties, select our audience, configure our delivery settings, and then review and send the email. There's a separate training video on that that walks through that at a very high level so that you can make sure and select all of the right options. Excuse me. Additionally, we can click the drop-down arrow next to any of our emails and choose Send here. This is where we can also just move right into a preview and test. We can do things like duplicating this email right away. A lot of options here in this drop-down menu itself. If you need additional assistance with Salesforce Marketing Cloud, submit a stable request by choosing Marketing Cloud, filling out the stable request form, selecting the type of assistance you're requesting, the date that you need the assistance by, and your request details themselves. Somebody will be in touch with you shortly. For assistance with Marketing Cloud, you can also contact the IT help desk at the information listed here on the screen. Thanks. Have a great one.